Okay, I need a reality check here, because I genuinely feel like I'm going insane. My boyfriend Dylan broke up with me 2 nights ago over what was, essentially, a stupid argument. And when I say broke up, I mean he packed a bag, said, "We're done," and walked out of the apartment we've shared for almost 2 years. Look, I'm not going to pretend I was an angel. I said some things. I might have pushed a button I shouldn't have. We were both heated, you know how it is. But are we really at a point where one bad fight erases everything? He's acting like I took a sledgehammer to our relationship, when all I did was, well, I used some harsh truths to win an argument. Since when is that a capital offense? He has this whole man of principle thing going on that's usually admirable, but sometimes it just makes him rigid and cold. He has these emotional tripwires, and if you accidentally step on one, the whole system shuts down. No discussion, no second chances. It's just over. It's not fair. You don't just throw away 2 years of history because your feelings got hurt. People fight. People say stupid shit. You're supposed to talk it through, not just detonate your life and walk away. So seriously, am I the crazy one here? Or did I just discover that the man I love is an emotionally stunted man-child who can't handle a real relationship? I'm sitting here surrounded by his things, and all I feel is this burning rage. He had no right to do this. For the most part, Dylan was the perfect boyfriend. Seriously, he's a physical therapist, so he has that caring, patient vibe down to a science. I remember one time I came home from work absolutely wrecked, on the verge of tears after my boss had torn apart a project I'd spent weeks on. I didn't even have to say anything. He just took one look at my face, sat me down on the couch, wrapped me in a blanket, and put on my favorite comfort movie without a word. He's smart. He remembers that I take my coffee with oat milk and a half spoon of sugar. And he was the first guy I've ever dated who actually seemed to be thinking about a future in concrete terms. We talked about everything: houses, travel, even stupid names for a golden retriever we'd get someday. He was stable, grounded. He made me feel safe, but he had this sensitivity, a fragility that I didn't understand. It was buried deep, but when it came out, it was like a shadow fell over everything. It all stemmed from his ex, Mia. They dated for 5 years, all through college and a bit after. From what he told me, she was his entire world and she shattered it. The breakup wasn't just a breakup. It was a character assassination. She cheated on him with one of his closest friends, and then, when he confronted her, she apparently told him he was predictable, boring, and that his dream of opening his own pediatric therapy clinic was a pathetic, small-town fantasy. She didn't just leave him. She hollowed him out. He told me this story one night about 6 months into our relationship. We'd had a little too much wine after a friend's engagement party, and he just broke down. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen him. He cried, telling me how it wasn't the cheating that destroyed him, but the way she used his own dreams and insecurities as a weapon to justify it. It left him with this deep-seated fear of not being enough, a terror of being seen as a failure by the person he loved most. He confessed that for a year afterward, he couldn't even bring himself to work on the business plan he'd been so passionate about. At the time, I held him and said all the right things. I told him I'd never do that to him, that his ambition was one of the things I loved most about him, that Mia was a monster for twisting something so good. And I meant it. But looking back, I think a part of me saw that confession differently. It felt less like a shared secret and more like he was handing me a user manual for his own heart. In that moment of his absolute weakness, I felt a surge of strength. I saw his wound not as a sacred trust, but as a problem that I, being stronger and more self-assured, would have to manage and fix. I was the one who was going to heal him. I was the one who truly understood his damage. And in a weird, messed-up way, that knowledge made me feel incredibly secure. It was proof that he needed me, that I had a power in this relationship that Mia never deserved. It was the key to him, and I never thought I'd use it. Not until he made me feel like I was losing. The fight started, as most of ours did, over something ridiculously small. It was about Saturday. I wanted to go to my friend Jessica's housewarming party. It was going to be a big deal. Catered, open bar, everyone from our social circle would be there. Dylan had, weeks ago, promised his brother he'd help him move into his new apartment on the same day. An honest, stupid scheduling conflict. "I can't just bail on him, Avery," he'd said, his tone reasonable. "It's the only day he could get the truck. We can go to Jessica's for a couple of hours in the evening after we're done." That should have been fine. A normal person would have said, "Okay, sounds like a plan." But I felt a flash of irritation. It wasn't about the party, it was about the principle of the thing. He wasn't choosing me first. "So I'm just supposed to show up late and alone to a party for one of my best friends because you'd rather haul couches all day?" I asked, hearing the edge in my own voice. "That's not what I said," he replied, his voice still calm, which only annoyed me more. "I'm not choosing boxes over you. I'm honoring a commitment I made." And that's when it started to spiral. We went back and forth, my arguments getting more emotional and his getting more logical and detached. He was using his therapist voice, that infuriatingly placid tone that made me feel like a hysterical patient. I felt myself losing ground, my reasons sounding petty even to my own ears. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't fighting back. He was just standing there being right, and I couldn't stand it. In my mind, he was being deliberately obtuse, punishing me with his rigid principles. A wave of hot, panicked anger washed over me. I needed to win. I needed to shake him out of his infuriating calm. And in that ugly moment, my mind went right to the user manual he'd given me all those months ago. I reached for the weapon. "You know, this is exactly the kind of thing she used to talk about, isn't it?" I said, my voice dropping into a low, venomous purr. He froze. "What?" "This rigidity," I said, gesturing vaguely at him. "This inability to be flexible. This is that predictability she hated so much, right? You'd rather stick to your boring little plan than do something spontaneous and fun. It's no wonder she got so bored she had to." I stopped myself, but the damage was done. I watched the color literally drain from his face. It wasn't like in the movies. It was slower, sicker. His skin went from its normal healthy tone to a pale, ashen gray. His jaw tightened, and a muscle ticked just below his eye. He looked at me, but his eyes were distant, as if he was looking straight through me at a ghost I had just summoned into the room. The air grew thick and cold. In that dead silence, a horrible, quiet calm settled in my chest. The argument was over. I had won. He just stood there, completely silent, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was nothing. A complete void. That blankness terrified me more than any shouting match could have. The sick thrill of my win was already curdling into a cold dread in my stomach. I wanted him to yell, to call me a bitch, to do anything other than stare at me like I was a stranger he'd just seen commit a horrific crime. But I couldn't back down. My pride, my stupid, inflated sense of being in control, wouldn't let me. Instead of apologizing, I doubled down. I had to prove to him, and to myself, that his reaction was the problem, not my words. "See," I said, trying to sound casual, dismissive. "You can't even talk about it. It's been years, Dylan. Are you ever going to get over it?" That's when I did it. As he watched me, his eyes wide with a kind of stunned horror, I pulled out my phone. My fingers felt strangely disconnected from my brain as I opened Instagram, went to the search bar, and typed in Mia's name. Her profile was public. It was full of pictures of her life now, travel, a new boyfriend, a dog. A perfect, happy life she'd built on the wreckage of his. I found the little message button. My thumb hovered over it. I looked up at Dylan, right into his eyes. I wanted him to see what I was doing. I wanted to show him that I wasn't afraid of his past, that I held all the power over it. Slowly, deliberately, I typed out the words, my face a mask of cold composure. "Hey, Mia. Just wanted to let you know Dylan's still not over you. Still letting your ghost dictate his whole life. Kinda sad, but I guess that's your win. Hope you're well." I held his gaze as my thumb moved to the send button. For a split second, I saw a flicker of pleading in his eyes, a silent don't. But I ignored it. I pressed down. The little paper airplane icon flew across the screen. Done. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. The sound of my own breathing was deafening. I had just taken the most vulnerable secret he had ever shared with me, packaged it up, and mailed it directly to the person who had caused the wound in the first place. And I had done it right in front of him, with a smile on my face. He didn't explode. He didn't break down. He didn't even raise his voice. All the fight just seemed to leave his body at once, replaced by a profound and chilling stillness. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a single, deep breath, and when he opened them again, they were clear. The hurt, the shock, the confusion, it was all gone. All that was left was a calm, devastating finality. "Okay," he said. His voice was quiet, almost unnaturally so. It was the voice of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt my bravado crumble under his gaze. It felt like he was seeing me for the very first time, and he didn't like what he saw. "I told you about her," he said, each word perfectly spaced, perfectly controlled. "I told you what she did, not just the cheating. I told you how she used my own hopes, my own vulnerabilities, to hurt me as deeply as she possibly could. I trusted you with that. That was the most fragile thing I had left, Avery, and I gave it to you." He shook his head slowly, a small, sad movement. "And you just did the exact same thing. You heard my deepest fear, that I'm weak, that I'm pathetic, that I'm still broken over her, and you weaponized it to win a fight about a party. Then you went a step further. You invited her into it. You tried to humiliate me in front of her, just for sport." He paused, and the silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "This isn't a fight," he continued, his voice unwavering. "This is a character issue. I have a principle. I will not be with someone who intentionally uses my trust against me. I can't. I won't go back there." And that was it. He turned around without another word and walked into our bedroom. I stood frozen in the living room, listening to the sounds of a drawer opening, the rustle of clothes. A few moments later, he emerged with a duffel bag over his shoulder, his car keys in his hand. He didn't look at me. He just walked to the door. "We're done, Avery," he said, his hand on the doorknob. And then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, and the sound echoed through the apartment, the loudest, most definitive sound I had ever heard. For the first 2 days, I was running on pure adrenaline and indignation. I told myself he was being dramatic. He was punishing me with the silent treatment, but he'd be back. He had to come back. His favorite mug was still in the dishwasher. His expensive running shoes were by the door. His entire life was still here. I paced the apartment, phone in hand, rehearsing the angry, magnanimous speech I'd give him when he finally called to apologize. But the call never came. By day 3, the anger started to curdle into a thick, syrupy panic. I tried calling him. It went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text, a long, rambling paragraph that was equal parts apology and accusation. No reply. I checked WhatsApp. My messages were stuck on a single gray tick. He had blocked me everywhere. That's when I called Olivia. I needed an ally. I needed someone to tell me I was right, that he was overreacting. I launched into the story, carefully editing it to cast myself in the most favorable light. I told her about the fight, how he was being stubborn, how I'd said one little thing about his ex, and now he was ghosting me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Avery," Olivia finally said, and her tone wasn't sympathetic. It was weary. "What exactly did you say?" So I told her. I told her everything. About bringing up Mia's insults, about sending the message. As the words came out of my mouth, they sounded uglier, crueler than they had in my head. The silence that followed was even longer this time. "Jesus Christ, Avery," she breathed. It sounded like a prayer. "Why would you do that? You know what he went through with her. He told you that in confidence." "I know, but he was being so infuriating," I said, my voice rising in a whine. "He wasn't fighting fair." "Fighting fair." Olivia's voice was sharp now, cutting through my self-pity. "This wasn't a boxing match. This was a relationship. He trusted you with his deepest wound, and you poured salt in it, and then called the person who stabbed him to come and have a look. What you did it was cruel. Genuinely, unforgivably cruel." My throat felt tight. I had no defense. "I saw him yesterday," she continued quietly. "He came by to drop off a gift for my mom's birthday. He looked empty. I asked him if he was okay." She hesitated. "Do you want to know what he said?" I whispered, "Yes." He said, "I'm not angry, I'm just done." I gave Avery the map to all my landmines, and she walked right into the middle of the field and started jumping. Then he said the thing that really stuck with me. He said she didn't do it to win an argument. She did it to prove she had the power to hurt me all over again. I can't live with someone who needs to have that kind of power over me. He's not coming back, Avery. You made sure of that. It's been 3 weeks. The rage has burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow, aching emptiness. I keep telling everyone I'm fine. I went out with Jessica and our friends last weekend, laughing too loud, drinking too fast. I made a big show of reinstalling Tinder on my phone, swiping dramatically through profiles. His loss, I declared, raising my glass in a toast to myself. Honestly, who needs a guy that fragile? I dodged a bullet. My friends exchanged uneasy glances but played along, bless their hearts. But it's all an act. The second I walk back into this apartment, the performance is over. The silence is a physical presence. It's filled with the ghosts of a future that won't happen now. I see the spot on the couch where we used to watch movies, the hook where his keys used to hang, the empty space in the closet that's now just my clothes. It's a museum of my own failure. Most nights, I end up in the same pathetic ritual. I open my phone, my fingers moving with a will of their own. I go to my sent messages on Instagram. There it is, that vicious little paragraph I sent to Mia. It sits there, stark and ugly. Underneath it, there's no reply. There never will be, just that single damning word in small gray letters. Seen, she saw it. She read my pathetic, cruel attempt to drag her into my mess, and she had the grace and dignity to simply ignore it, to not give me the satisfaction of a reaction. From there, I go to her profile. I scroll. I look at pictures of her and her new boyfriend hiking in the mountains. I see a video of them playing with their dog in a sunny backyard. She looks happy, normal, untouched by the grenade I tried to roll into her life. I've become a ghost haunting the edges of a stranger's happiness, a stranger whose life I tried to poison out of spite. And here I am, the one who's actually been poisoned, trapped in this quiet, self-made hell, staring at a screen and wondering how I could have been so spectacularly, breathtakingly stupid.